Good morning or good afternoon or good evening to everyone all over the world. This is the 17th Home Gemmology webinar supported by CIBJO, the World Jewellery Confederation, today with the great co-hosting abilities of Edward Johnson, former GIA director in London. And I think we are all set to start. Edward, we are all set? Everything is set?
You're looking good from where I sit. Go for it.
Okay, good. So today the topic will be on diamonds. It's a repetition of whatever we've done on the very third Home Gemmology webinar in late March. And I did a little bit of editing of this webinar, so it's not exactly the same, a few improvements. And so let's go for it. And we will cover today a series of topics from, and this is important, the current diamond production in Brazil, because we associate Brazil with colored gemstones. We hardly associate Brazil with diamonds. And when we do so, we actually associate with historical use of diamond, not modern production. And I will give you some numbers and some names of current diamond operations going on in Brazil. And also we will address some notable Brazilian diamonds, especially those that are colored, and especially among them, the reds, the fancy reds, and a couple of really famous ones, they come from Brazil. And of course, we will address the history of diamond in Brazil and its impact in jewelry design, and also in jewelry, in diamond cuts, and in the trade in general. And we will end up with a very short presentation of the Portuguese Crown Jewels that haven't hardly been on public display for 25 years or more, and they will be in a couple of years if the renovation is ended in time in 2021 or 2022. The Royal Palace will reopen with the Royal Collection, the jewelry collection, on public display for all of you to come here and to help our economy with your tourism and visit the crown jewels. And I will be happy to go there with you. And as I said, Brazil is known for its colored gemstones, right? And most of you, and if you are from Brazil, you know this gentleman and you know this name, Jules Roger Sauer. He just passed away a few years ago. He, for some, was like the forefather of the colored gemstone industry in Brazil because he was vertically integrated. He started really early in the 1940s, in 1941, as a mining operator. He was vertically integrated from mine to consumer, and and the company, which its name now is Sauer, 1941. They changed the name of the company from Amsterdam Sauer to that one. Actually, it was a vertically integrated business, and this gentleman, he was a visionary on this industry, and he did help to revamp the Brazilian colored gemstone industry. But we are not talking about colored gemstones. I just wanted to pay tribute to this gentleman that a lot of us, we owe him a lot because he did a lot for Brazil and for colored gemstones in general. When we think about Brazilian gemstones, we think about a lot of gem species, but I'm going to highlight just a few. Of course, the lovely, really expensive, extremely rare Paraíba tourmalines, those that were discovered in the 1980s in the Paraíba state, and eventually they were also discovered in the neighboring state of Rio Grande do Norte. And later on, we have the same kind of material in Nigeria and also in Mozambique. But the original ones were actually from Brazil, from Paraíba. And of course, although aquamarines, fine quality aquamarines occur in many places of the world today, the first really important deposits with huge production, I mean, we have the Russian ones in the 19th century, but it was Brazil that in the early 20th century produced good quantities and good qualities of aquamarines. And this example that is on your screen is just a really nice example of a huge carving statue. It's a sculpture on the 10,000 carat sculpture. It's currently at the Smithsonian. And I think just I've chosen 3 gemstones, and the last one is that the so-called imperial topaz from Ouro Preto in Minas Gerais. That's this kind of color, which is a orangey pinkish, a deep orange, almost reddish colored topaz, only occurs in commercial quantities on that part of the world. We have some other occurrences of topaz in Russia or in Pakistan, but nothing compared with this kind of orangey color. So what is called imperial topaz in the trade, most of it comes from Brazil. And also, we know that Brazil is today known as a really important diamond producer. And this 50 carat rough, 50 carat is quite a big diamond, was recovered from the very new operation that I will be speaking about in a couple of minutes. And from that stone, it was cut a 20 carat stone. And from this, for those of you that are in the diamond industry, you know that often we lose about more than half of the weight of the rough. So if the rough is like this one, is a 50 carat stone, maybe the end stone will be less than half the weight, and this is the case. It was a 20 carat stone. Sometimes the same rough can go into more stones, but I'm not a diamond planner, so I wouldn't know how to justify that, but it's done by machine. I will talk about that when we address important diamonds from Brazil. Of course, that when we think about diamonds in Brazil, our mind goes to antique jewelry and goes to antique the use of diamonds, not current production. And that has a motif, because diamonds were particularly important in jewelry in the 18th century when they were found. But today, and let me just stress that today, Brazil still has an important, it's artisanal small scale operations all across the country, particularly in Minas Gerais, in Rondônia, in Bahia, and Mato Grosso. And Rondônia, for those of you that are in Brazil, you know that it's really far away state. It's far away from everything. And some people, they say it's like the far west of Brazil. And you have a lot of very small operations going on there, but they are mostly secondary deposits. If you are a geologist, you know what I mean, but if you are not, it's really easy to understand. It's not because they are secondary in importance. It's because the deposits where those diamonds are found, the diamonds, I mean, other way, the diamonds that are found on those deposits, they came up to the surface in primarily in other rocks. We all know that diamonds come to the surface via a volcanic eruption, via a volcanic rock. And that volcanic rock has many names, and one of the names is a kimberlite. Let's just use that one. And when the kimberlite emerges and erupts to the surface, then it becomes a rock. That lava, let's call it lava, the magma, becomes a solid rock. And sometimes it becomes a mountain because it's quite thick, like a volcano, right? And all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, that rock is the primary place where the diamonds appeared, meaning that it was the first, it was the premier way of diamonds appearing on the surface of the planet was through that volcanic rock. And then we all know that the weather, the biodiversity, the rain, the weather, the temperature, the animals, and the acidity, etc., start to degrade the rocks. They start to rotten in a certain way. It's called erosion, and it's called a sedimentary process. And that kind of erosion and degradation of the rock eventually breaks the solid rock into elements. And those elements are the minerals that constitute that rock. And where do those minerals go? They go into river streams. And we all know that river streams, they carry rocks. They carry little stones, they carry sand. And if those rocks or that sand is composed of diamonds, then if they might concentrate in river streams, and when they concentrate, they become an economical deposit, and then they become a secondary deposit, and that's it. I try to explain geology in a very simplistic way, but the secondary deposit doesn't mean secondary in importance. It means like it's a geological name for a sedimentary deposit. As a primary deposit, and this is new, Brazil was known for secondary deposits. It still is known for the production on secondary deposit. It was not known for the production of diamonds in primary deposit, meaning in a diamantiferous volcanic pipe, in a diamantiferous kimberlite, if you wish. And this was the first one that was found to be economically viable. And since 2016, it's in operation. As you can see, it's a very small operation. It's not comparable to those huge Botswana or Russia deposits or even South African deposits. It's a quite small deposit, but it produces good quality diamonds like the 50 carat one that I just showed you a couple of slides ago. And this mine in Bahia, the so-called Braúna kimberlite complex, has produced diamonds in a quantity that impacted the production of diamonds in Brazil. If you liked statistics, before the Kimberley process became into action in the early millennia, the statistics of diamond production were not kosher, if I can say so. There was no regulation, so you couldn't trust the statistics anyway. From the Kimberley process on, now you have a customs control of every diamond that is exported, every rough diamond that is exported in or out producing or consuming or manufacturing countries. So you have stats, you have official data. And if you Google Kimberley process statistics on Google, you can find the site where those statistics that are on your screen are published every year. The latest stats are 2018, and those are the ones that are on your screen right now. And when we look at the stats, we look at a few tens of thousands of carats of diamonds, and they increase significantly, like tenfold, when the Lipari operation in Braúna mine in Bahia started in operation here in 2016. And you look at those numbers and you see, wow, 250,000 carats of diamonds. Woo, that's really huge numbers. It is for us, but for a diamond producing country, it's nothing. When we look at the diamond figures of Canada, of Botswana, Russia, Namibia, South Africa, the numbers are much bigger than this one, sometimes by tenfold. And so 200,000 carats, it's a good number, but it's not like, whoa, astonishing numbers. Brazil today, it's not the most important diamond producer in the world, but historically, it was the top, the #1 producer in the world, and we are going to address that in a couple of minutes. If you want to learn more about Brazilian diamonds and its history and its current production, I strongly recommend that you click on one of the links that I'm sure Edward Johnson is about to post on the chat log. And it's an article published in Gemmology. If you cannot click on the link that Edward is posting there, you just go to GIA website, gia.edu, and you go to Gems and Gemmology page, and you just, on the search, you put diamonds in Brazil, and this article, a peer review article, pops up like in #1. It's a really comprehensive article on Brazilian diamonds, and it's a fantastic work. And not only you will learn from this article the history and the current situation and the geology of Brazilian diamonds, but you will also, if you want to learn more, go to the references, to the literature, and you can see hundreds of references on geology, history, and jewelry of Brazilian diamonds, and you can learn everything. And that's why a peer review article is so important, because you have all the references there, and you can learn from the article, and you can learn from the sources that the scientists use to compile that comprehensive article. So I strongly recommend that you access this one. It's free. GIA puts every article for free. So it's a great service to our community indeed. So also, this is not on the GIA article, but if you go to the Geological Survey of Brazil, you see a lot of ongoing projects, and those are quite the new ones, and some of them are really promising. And one of the things that probably Brazil misses is investment in the exploration, in having geological survey exploration on that huge territory to be able to identify, as it was made in Bahia, kimberlite that is productive. And I mean, but it costs a lot of money to do that kind of research before you actually implement a massive, large-scale mine like in Braúna. Many of the operations that go on in Brazil, because they go on secondary deposits in a very localized area, they are artisanal and they are small scale. But it can happen if there is enough investment in there, if there is a good ROI, return on investment, you can have another kimberlite exploration in Brazil in the next few years. We never know. Let me click here. Okay. And now, what kind of diamonds come from Brazil? Are they special in some way? I mean, diamonds are diamonds, okay? And diamonds from Brazil, they occur from the very colorless to near colorless ones to some colored diamonds, and from the smallest size to the bigger size. So actually it's the same as it happens almost everywhere. But Brazil is known particularly for one kind of diamond, not because it produces a lot, because there aren't that many of such diamonds. And we are talking about red diamonds, fancy red diamonds. Among diamonds, maybe purple is even more rare than red, but red diamonds are extremely, extremely rare. And red diamonds above certain carat weight, above 1, 2 carats, it's crazy. We are used to see, even on Gems and Gemology, Russell Shore, he documented the Argyle tenders, the anniversary of Argyle pink diamond tenders a couple of years ago at Gems and Gemology. And we look at the Argyle diamond, the Argyle in Australia, and you see occasionally a few fancy reds coming up. But in large sizes, only from Brazil, in my knowledge. And here on the screen, you see two diamonds. The one that you see on the top was published by GIA more than 20 years ago. It's a 1.75 carat red diamond. It's a lovely crystal, and it was sold by $800,000 20 years ago or more. I think it was 1990. I can't remember. This is my senior moment now. And the crystal that you see on the bottom, it's photographed in 3 angles. It's a really large diamond for a red. It's a 13 carat diamond. And I know that it was on Almas Tower in Dubai, not that long ago, being planned or being cut. I have no idea if they ended up the cutting or not yet. But if they did, and if they accomplished a good quality stone, it might have resulted in one of the biggest, if not the biggest or largest, red diamond in history. And some of you know, but some of you don't know, that when diamonds go to GIA for a color grading, for fancy color grading, the way it is graded is from the facet up. You don't see the diamonds from the side as you do with the colorless or near colorless diamonds. You access fancy colors from the table, face up. And because you look at them face up, the cutting plays a huge role on the apparent color. And the geniality of cutting, for instance, a pinkish red diamond like the one you see here on the screen, is being able to bring up a red color from it with proper cutting and proper proportions. And that's magical, and that's a skill that not that many have. But as I said, I have no idea what was the size of that diamond and what color grade was this diamond. If you are if you know anything about this diamond, please put it on the chat. I would love to see this finished product, if it is finished already. and it's cut in Dubai, which is not, we are not used to see important stones being cut in Dubai. Now it's happening. I'm going to show you two really famous diamonds, red diamonds. Liverpool fans like Edward Johnson, they might love this kind of color. And the red diamonds, the most famous one probably, it's this one, the Moussaieff Red. It was cut from a Brazilian diamond, almost a 14 karat rough. And the most unusual thing about this diamond is not the shape, it's quite unusual, the shape, but it's the clarity grade. It's an internally flawless diamond. It's really unusual to have a red stone with such a high clarity. It's absolutely out of the ordinary, because after this one, maybe the second most famous red diamond, it's for gemology geeks like we are, is the Hancock Red Diamond. It's not much of a diamond. I mean, it's under a carat, and under a carat means less than 6.5 millimeters in diameter. It's not a big stone. And if you look at it carefully, it has high visible characteristics. I say characteristics. I mean, if you are selling, you say characteristics. If you are buying, you say inclusions. So, but technically they are inclusions, but you can call them internal characteristic, which it is more elegant if you are doing a sales rhetoric. But that's how things work. Anyway, this is an included stone, but it doesn't matter. It's red. Red, the color in fancy color diamonds, the most important thing is color. For all that matter, in colored gemstones, the most important thing is color. And this one, color, was really unusual. And what made this stone historically relevant was the fact that it was bought in the 1950s, for $13,000 approximately, and in 1987 was sold at auction. So the sales number is public, for $880,000, almost $1 million a carat. And that was like, boom, $1 million a carat, like in 1987. Wow, that was nuts, crazy. And it was so crazy that this record on auction stood up as a record for 20 years. It was a blue diamond in 2007 that dethroned the Hancock Red from the most expensive diamond per carat in auction. And that's what this is what made this stone so relevant. It was the price, $1 million a carat, crazy. Today, it's not so unusual for a fancy colored diamond, but it was on those days, make no mistake. But this diamond was important for the fancy colored diamond industry. And I have no idea who has it, but it's a lovely red. There are many more reds, but like the Rob Red, it was a pear-shaped 0.55 carats, also a fancy red, also from Brazil. So mostly the most famous red diamonds, the historical ones, historical in decades, are from Brazil. Argyle Diamonds in Australia, the Argyle mine was discovered in the 1980s. So the production is from the late 80s up until now, and the mine is about to close, as most of you know. So more notable diamonds from Brazil. Now let's go into not the fancy colors, although this one is it's actually a fancy light one. When you look at this, you might see a ring, but it is actually a bracelet. It's a Cartier bracelet with a really large 128 karat diamond. It's a Star of the South. It was discovered in the 1850s in Bahia. I have a fly now here. It was discovered in Bahia in Brazil, and it was cut from a 250 karat stone approximately, and it was cut in Amsterdam in Costa Diamonds, and it belonged to the Barodas in India, so it's historically relevant, this diamond, and now it's owned by Cartier, and it's set on this bracelet, and it's a fancy like pinkish brown and a type 2A diamond. For those of you that are gemologists, maybe this guy can be treated, HPHC treated, and becomes a decolor, but that's another thing. We are not going to do that, are we? Maybe the most important Brazilian diamond by size is the President Vargas. It was in honor of a former president in Brazil in the 1930s. And if you look carefully at this black and white photograph by Harry Winston, you look at those lines, okay? And those lines were made by the diamond marker. And what was the diamond marker? He was that really well-paid chap that he looked at a rough diamond, and he, without technology, okay, this was 1930s, and he just looked at it with the hand lens and decided where the stone was to be sawed or cleaved, separated in 2 or more segments for further for further manufacturing process. Lapidary is not applicable to diamonds, the nomenclature. But today we have those 3D, very sophisticated diamond planning machines. Just stick a diamond in there and it make all the calculations for you. But for really important stones, you still need really intelligent and talented people that look at the diamond and make decisions. But on those days, no machines. Decision-making was based on experience only. And this diamond, you look at it and what a mess. It was 29 stones were cut from that huge rock. And the biggest one was a 44 carat stone. And the rock was 700 carats. So go figure. Which means that not always a huge diamond results on a huge cut diamond. On this case was 29 stones. Many more diamonds are known from Brazil. The pictures are official, they are not very good quality, but you look at the carat weight and you look at the colors and you see that even today Brazil is a serious diamond producer, not only in history. And let me just show you this out of curiosity. This is a really famous diamond, and the pictures are not related to this stone. Those are carbonados, which is a particular type of polycrystalline, porous, low density diamond. It's an industrial grade, not gem quality. And I'm talking about this Carbonado do Sérgio, a really huge, more than 3,000 carat diamond that was found in 1905. Why am I bringing this to the floor? It's not gem quality, no. It's a carbonado, yes, very strange material. It occurs only in Brazil and the African Central Republic. I think it's Central Republic of Africa. Well, it's a country in the central of Africa. It is called Africa. You know what I mean. But the name of the country, now another senior moment now. And why am I bringing this? Because this chap, the Carbonado do Sérgio, I have no idea the whereabouts of this huge diamond. It's the largest diamond on record, the largest. There is no record of any diamond larger than this one. Maybe you are thinking, oh, there is in the British Crown Jewels. You have the Cullinan. Yes, you do. But the Cullinan is 61 carats lighter than the Carbonado do Sérgio. I mean, of course, the Cullinan is great gem quality material, and the Carbonado is industrial material. It doesn't compare in quality, but the Carbonado do Sérgio, a Brazilian stone, is the largest diamond ever found. And curiously, they were found on the same year, 1905. So it's 6,000 carats of diamonds in 2 diamonds. It's crazy. And let me tell you a story about the Braganza diamond. In Portugal, we should say the Braganza diamond. Braganza is the name of a family, of the dynasty, of a noble house in Portugal. Eventually, they became the last dynasty of Portugal is the Braganzas. And the Braganza diamond is an astonishing story. When you study, if you were a gemology student or a diamond grading student on GIA, GMA, doesn't matter. When you read about famous diamonds, you must have heard about the Braganza diamond. And the Braganza diamond, in every textbook, it says that It used to be a huge, large stone from Brazil. It belonged to the Portuguese crown, and it was not a diamond, it was a topaz. So then this is what is on the literature. And the Braganza diamond has an interesting story, because there was a writer, a field geologist, actually there was a traveler that was a great storyteller, John Moussaieff. He was British, I think. He was the Vincent Pardieu of those ages. He was the field gemologist of those ages. And he traveled at the expense of the king of Portugal all around Brazil to report on mines, on the mining, etc. And when he was by the court in the palace, he was asked to go to the palace and to observe a certain specimen. And he reports on his book that he saw a big pebble that was not a diamond. He called it a crystal, and he made a chip on that crystal to make sure that it was not a diamond. We know in gemology, you don't do destructive tests to know that that diamond is a diamond or not. And let me give you an example why gemology that cannot afford to do potentially destructive tests. You see this glass of water, and you know what a cemetery is. And there was this cemetery with a plaque saying, "Here lies John. He wanted to make sure that the glass of water had poison." And he did have poison. So you never do anything that is potentially destructive just to make a point. That's why he was not a gemologist. Gemology was created only 100 years later. And, but still, he decided and he knew that it was not a diamond. And I have no idea why, but in every textbook, it says that it is a topaz. So at the Royal Palace in Ajuda in Lisbon, it's closed and it will be open only in a couple of years. There is a big pebble, okay? The weight is 342 grams, and it's this pebble, quite large, and both the size and the description match whatever John Moussaieff mentioned about the Braganza diamond. And when you do a closer look at this, it's very easy to identify it, not as a topaz, but, or of course, let alone a diamond, but as a beryl, an aquamarine. For those of you that like crystallography, look at here on your left, you see a couple of etch marks, hexagonal etch marks, revealing the hexagonal symmetry of the material, hence typical of a beryl. And many other characteristics are consistent with beryl, so it's easy to identify this as a beryl. And let me elaborate a little bit on the weight, because John Moussaieff, he didn't refer to the gram weight of the stone, he referred in carats. But the carats on those days were not the same as in today. But let's go, I will visit that thing later on. What is a carat? Not a carrot, but a carat. My accent is funny. A carat, a carat in French. Actually, it began as a French word, but the carat, it's a measurement of weight, and it is equal to 200 milligrams or 0.2 gram, meaning that in 1 carat, you have, in 1 gram, you have 5 carats. As simple as that, really easy. And if we want to convert 342 grams of this pebble weight into carats, it's easy. Just multiply by 5 and you have the carat weight. But the Braganza was reportedly 1,680 carats, not over 1,700 carats. And let us do some gymnastics to understand that maybe that number is the same. Up until 1907, when the metric carat was defined. And why metric? Because it was on the metric system. And by the way, the metric system was abandoned in the 1960s. So from the 1960s up until now, it makes no sense to say metric carat because there is no metric system anymore. But it did up until the 1960s. So up until 1907, when the metric carat was defined in Paris, each and every trade place, Lisbon, Madrid, Paris, London, New York, Amsterdam, each and every one of them, they had their own carat system. So there was no uniformity in the carat weights. And that's why it was uniformized, uniform, it was harmonized into one universal unit, the metric carat. And before it was uniformed, in Lisbon, the metric carat was about a little bit over 205 milligrams, and not 200 milligrams as the new metric carat or the new modern carat. And if we convert, if we use the conversion, it's very easy to conclude that the actual carat weight of that stone goes into 668 carats, pretty close to 1680 carats that were reported. So we are basically talking about the same specimen that is on the Royal Palace in Ajuda in Lisbon, not a topaz, it's an aquamarine, it's a beryl. So the Braganza diamond is solved. Actually, I reported on this at the GIA symposium in 2006, more than 14 years ago, when I was 3 years old, of course. So, oh, my voice, I have to drink something. Let's really quick talk about the impact of diamonds in history, of the Brazilian diamonds in history. Before diamonds were discovered in Brazil, they came basically from India and Borneo, and they were not in big quantities, and they had to be distributed for all the places in Europe that were using diamonds, and the quantity was really limited, and the styles of cutting were not as extensive as they became, and they were basically rose cuts, lasks, and table cuts, and a few other minor cuts. And when we look into jewelry of those days, we see a diamond here, a diamond there, and we see a lot of gold work. Again, look at this. You see a diamond here, a diamond there, rose cuts, not brilliant cuts, and you see a lot of gold work. And when you turn the jewel upside down, look at this work. Jewelers or bench jewelers, bench goldsmiths, they were masters in sculpturing that gold, making it like a piece of art, absolutely a piece of art, because the real craft was in working the precious metal. When the Portuguese arrived in Brazil looking for precious things, and when they discovered diamonds, things changed. But let's go back a few hundred years to explain you what happened when the Portuguese got there. And this is basically the same that you saw at the Colored Gemstone webinar a couple of weeks ago, but if you didn't see, you will enjoy. So when the Portuguese got there in the 1500s, we saw the bush, parrots, some animals, some local Indians, no caipirinha, no samba. It was just like that. And our neighbors, the Spanish, our ancestral enemies or adversaries, they were finding in their own Americas, they were finding gold, platinum, silver. They were also finding emeralds in present-day Colombia. They were finding pearls in Panama, Venezuela, Mexico. They were finding a lot of precious things. And the Portuguese, they were, again, with the bush, the parrots, the Indians, the woods, and no caipirinha, no samba, nothing. And that's why people had to do something about it. And the bandeirantes, which they were really courageous men that were formed in São Paulo to go into the bush and try to find the gold, the silver, the platinum, not the platinum, they didn't care much about platinum, but the precious metals and the precious stones that the Spanish, they were finding in the Americans, and we didn't. And they eventually find the gold in the late 17th century, and huge quantities of gold. And when you find gold in river streams as secondary deposits, you start looking at the ground, okay, to find more gold. And this eventually led to the discovery of diamonds in river streams and alluvial deposits, those secondary deposits, remember, and associated with rivers. And they find diamonds in such a huge quantity compared with those coming from Asia, mostly from India, that it changed completely the way jewels were designed and the way diamonds were cut. And this is just to give you an idea. It looks like a COVID mask. It was not. It was a slavery thing. Slaves from Africa were actually working in the diamond, working everywhere in Brazil. And as you see here, those guys are really busy while the others are really working. But fortunately, our civilization is much better today. When we look at the figures, we see that the amount of diamonds arriving in Europe was like a huge amount compared with the previous amount coming from Asia that were, by the way, controlled by the English and the Borneo ones by the Dutch. And it changed completely jewelry. Do you remember those intricate goldsmith work with a few stones here and there? Look at this stone, at these jewels. You see stones everywhere, everywhere. It's stones, like a nouveau riche kind of thing. We can afford, there are stones everywhere, so let's use stones like crazy. Again, even in jewelry pieces that use more than diamonds, you can hardly see any metal anymore. Remember that in the old days, it was the goldsmith, very artistic one, working the precious metal, mostly gold, that was the really looked for and people wanted to work with him. But maybe he went out of job because now it was the gemstone setter. The gemstone setters, they were really in high demand because they had a lot of stones to set. And the gemstone setter became important because on the jewelry, you see no metal anymore, no metal. Another impact was on diamond cut. And I'm going to skip the Mazar and Cardinal for now. And when you look at the name that we give to this type of cut today, old brilliant cut. Remember that if you lived in the 18th century, this was not old, this was quite modern, because the brilliant cut was developed in the mid-17th century and it became really popular in the 1750s. Why? When the abundance of Brazilian diamonds was such that the new type of cut became really popular and really fashionable. We call it old because now it's old, but on those days, the brilliant diamonds or brilliant cuts, they were, wow, in high demand. Just to give you a really quick idea of the evolution of diamond cuts, you see on the late 15th century, early 16th century, the rose cut. It was really popular in the 1500s with the shipments from diamonds from Goa to Europe by the Portuguese, by the way. And also in the 1700s, with the discovery of diamonds in Brazil, and particularly in the 1750s, the new brilliant cut, not the old, it was new at the time, was popular. And by the way, in the 1870s, almost at the same time that diamonds in South Africa were discovered, a machine that would be revolutionary for diamond cut, that was the mechanical bruting machine that enabled round outlines in diamonds, not the irregular ones, but the roundish. They were really popular for the new production of South Africa. And of course, in the 20th century, you had the more than brilliant cut. In jewelry that was impacted by the Brazilian diamond, it was almost all the, what we call today, the old brilliant cut. And look at the trade names that you see there on the bottom. You see the word old mine cut. And then we look at it and okay, old mine, but the expression is a 19th century, a late 19th century expression to do what? To separate between the new mines, South Africa, from the old mines, Brazil. Because the new materials from South Africa, they were using the new type of lapidary machine, round outlines, and it was called now we call them old European cut. And the other with a cushion shape or irregular outline that came traditionally from Brazil, they were called old mine cuts because they came from the old mines. Where were the old mines? Brazil. And that's where the old mine cut trade name emerges. Everything is explained at that GIA article I just gave you. And this is a great example of a mid-18th century jewelry full of diamonds with a few rubies, and by the way, a few garnets and a pink topaz. And do you see metal? No metal at all, only gem setting. No metal, sorry. Yngwie Malmsteen, great metal player, Swedish, by the way. So you see no metal in 18th century jewelry post diamonds from Brazil, because diamonds were so abundant that the way that jewels became made a design changed completely. And not only with diamonds, but also with all the other colored gemstones that started to arrive from Brazil, from topaz, chrysoberyl, rock crystal, amethyst, colorless topaz, you name it. So to end up, and we are close to the end, let's just go over a few. Oh, my English is really late day. Go over a few crown jewels of Portugal that will be on public display in a couple of years. Probably the most fascinating one is the golden fleece order that you see here on the portrait of John VI. You see here on his chest, it was used like a collar, and this is quite heavy. And you can look here, the scale, it's big, huge. And curiously, for those of you that like evolution of cuts, those are old cut diamonds. I mean, brilliant cut diamonds, if you wish. The settings are opened, but when you look at the sapphire and you know about old cuts, 18th century sapphire cut, you don't recognize this as an 18th century cut, and it is not. This sapphire was bought in the 1950s as a restoration of the crown jewels. So if you understand lapidary work, you can spot an update or a restoration. And also this plaque of 3 military orders. You see that in here in the portrait. Again, look at the scale, it's quite huge. The diamonds are fabulous. You can see a few potentially decolored diamonds. They are type 2As, absolutely stunning. And this gold box, French made, it was made by the goldsmith, the official jeweler of the King Louis XV in Paris. And the most important fact of this box is not the gold work, it's lovely. It's the fact that it has one of the few Lisbon cut diamonds that I have ever seen in real life. When I was a gemological student, and not a gemological student, a gemology student, I learned about this modification of the diamond cut, that it was called the Lisbon cut. And what was it? It was a special diamond cut where the main crown, and by the way, the main pavilion facets, the bezel ones, okay, the ones that are losangular in shape, they were cut in two, so they became two triangles. And you see here on this picture that this lozang is actually cut in two, like you can see over here. And this approximately 10 carat diamond on this box, it's the only one of this size that I have ever came across as a Lisbon cut. And it took me almost 20 years since I learned about Lisbon cut and when I actually saw my first one at the Portuguese Crown Jewels. Curiously, a couple of years ago in Cabral Boncada Leilões, an auction house in Portugal, 20th century ring with a potentially 18th century Lisbon cut diamond went for auction. And you can see here on the crown, and the bezel facet is divided in two. Quite interesting thing. So just to finish, a few stars from the 18th century, and you see here Queen Marie d'Orléans. She was French, quite a tall woman. She was Queen of Portugal, the last Queen of Portugal, by the way, wearing that tiara with those lovely stars that they were detached, and they could also serve as a collar, as a necklace. And you see those lovely sapphires with internal characteristics that are consistent with the Sri Lankan origin. And of course, you see this necklace, absolutely stunning, 1840, made in Portugal in gold and Brazilian diamonds. And you can visit all those crown jewels in 2021 or 22, we never know now, when they become publicly available on the special museum that is being built here in Lisbon, near the Pastéis de Belém factory in Lisboa. So it's really a nice walk from Pastéis de Belém uphill to the palace, and then you can visit the crown jewels eventually. Of course, that Brazilian diamonds were also used all across Europe, and we see here two examples of absolutely stunning jewelry collections. On your right, you see the Kremlin, the diamond fund, and some of those diamonds must have been from Brazil. And on your left, you see the Dresden green, Indian origin, but on an 18th century jewel that was originally the Golden Fleece insignia, and all those diamonds, most of them might be possibly from Brazil. So the other and the last impact of Brazilian diamonds was the discovery of the other colored gemstones like chrysoberyl, topaz, amethyst, colorless topaz, aquamarine, you name it, that were really unique in Portuguese 18th century, late 18th century, early 19th century jewelry. That was also a subject of a previous webinar with Luisa Penalva from the Museu Nacional de Arte Antiga, the Antique Art Museum in Lisbon. And so this is it, and we finished. And I think I finished a little bit later than usual. I took much more time than I'm used to. But anyway, as a conclusion, let me say that Brazilian diamonds made a huge impact in 18th century jewelry because the setters became really important trade on those days, because you had diamonds everywhere to set, and eventually later other colored gemstones as well. It confirmed the brilliant cut, or the old brilliant cut if you wish, as the most fashionable and most wanted diamond fashion cut since the since the 1750s. And also the production today, it doesn't compare in importance like the production in the 18th century, but it's relevant and comes mostly from secondary deposits. And there is already one important kimberlite in production in Bahia. And just as a curiosity, the most famous fancy reds that come from the fancy red diamonds, most of them, the sizable ones, actually come from Brazil. At least the most important that I know come from Brazil, although Argyle Diamond also produces small, usually under 2 carat cut fancy red diamonds. And this is it. Thank you very much. And hopefully I will see you next week, in a week from now, with Dr. Jack Ogden for the sapphire, the early history of sapphires in our next Home Gemmology webinar. So Edward, back to you. I need some water, and I hope you are still there, or are you like sleeping already?
No, I'm still awake. I'm still awake. I am still awake. Rui, thank you very much. And I speak on behalf of everybody pouring their gratitude out to you in the chat. You need a break, have some water, relax, sit back, feel the sun on your face. And let me go through the questions and find the most difficult ones for you to answer. This is the new way of doing it, right? But before we do that, there was some interesting conversations going on in the chat. And by the way, that country that's a republic in the center of Africa, you got it right in lots of different permutations. It's the Central African Republic. So thank you very much to the chat log for confirming that as we went along. We do have a couple of questions, so I'll turn to that if you're ready. And even if you're not ready, I'm still going to turn to them. Adolfo, our friend from Madrid. Hi, Adolfo. Great to have you with us. He asks, what diamond types can you find in Brazil beside 2A?
I think you can find basically everyone. Maybe let me put it this way. Diamond types is a complex thing. You have type 2s when you have no nitrogen detectable with infrared spectroscopy. That's the technical way of saying it. And type 2As, you have two types. One that has no nitrogen, of course, and no other things. It's a type 2A, and usually they are colorless. They can be brown, they can be pink, depending on the defects they might have on the crystal structure. And then if they have boron, they are type 2Bs. And Brazil, you can find bluish diamonds as well. The type 1s, type 1B has nitrogen detectable in infrared spectroscopy, and the nitrogens, they are isolated. And it's very rare to see type 1Bs, because when diamonds are formed in the earth, nitrogens are isolated, and then over time, in the high pressure and high temperature inside the planet, those nitrogens start to aggregate, and they become aggregates of nitrogen. And then you can have the types, if they are aggregated, you have type 1As, and then depending on the type of aggregation, you have type 1AA, type 1AB, and then you can have type 1AA plus type 1AB, and you have mixed types. So it's a really complex thing. So I would say every type occurs in Brazil, even possibly, I have no idea, the young type 1Bs. Young in terms of diamond formation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Gracias, Adolfo.
There's another one here from Susan Jacques. Susan has been listening to a few of your webinars and asking some questions, and we're not sure whether it's Susan Jacques from GIA or not. If it is, it'd be great to hear in the chat. But anyway, Susan asks a question about the Lisbon cut. Can you talk a little bit about that, the Lisbon cut, and when was it created?
I have no idea, because no documentation yet I have found and have been published on that. But that particular box that I've shown you is mid 17th century. So I presume that kind of cut is around that date or predates the 1750s. But I have no idea why is it called the Lisbon cut, and when was it made. I only saw two examples, those two that I just mentioned, and for years I only knew one, and for even more years I knew none, and they were on GMA course notes for ages, the Lisbon cut. And when I tried to look at in the literature to find any evidence of that kind of cut, I have found none. But I'm not an historian. I know that Luisa Penalva, she's on the list. She's an historian, and some other historians might be on the room today. But I have never seen any published work on the Lisbon cut diamond to really know when was it cut, where was it cut, and was it cut in Lisbon, or was only a diamond cut that got the name Lisbon for some reason. I have no idea.
Isn't it great how some of the stories or some of the things that we know in gemology about gemstones, we actually don't know. It's information that's passed down from person to person, and some of it's never been verified. And the Braganza story is a great example of that. So thank you for spending your time to tell that story again. It's always good to hear it.
And by the way, you are English, right? So there is a Portuguese queen that you know really well, which was Catherine of Braganza. She was married with, I can't remember the name, another senior moment. She was married in the 1640s or 1650s. I can't remember. Luisa Penalva, she might know it. If you can pop Luisa in the chat, what was the name of the English king? I think it was James I. Well, it doesn't matter. But she was a Catholic, right? On a Protestant court. And so so she could have some mingling, some not social proximity with some other Catholics, she would organize some afternoon teas with Catholic companions, and that's when the 5 o'clock, very British, tea break emerged. So actually it's a Portuguese thing, like port wine is a Portuguese thing, like Bruno Fernandes in Liverpool. He's not in Liverpool, he's in Manchester.
No.
But he will beat Liverpool. Anyway.
We're going to have a discussion about football as well as gemstones
not today. Not today. Liverpool takes every team. They are actually the best ones.
Thank you. So kind of you to say. There's another one here, which, you know, you spoke so eloquently and paid homage to Jules Roger Sauer.
Yes.
I mean, Mariano Abdul asks, can you tell us a little bit more about why he was so important to the trade in Brazil?
He was a pioneer in the sense that when he got to Brazil in the 1940s, when he started to work in Brazil in the 1940s, there was no colored gemstone industry going on. You had diamond operations, you had some colored gemstone finds here and there, but and nothing was systematized. And what he did was has one word: beneficiation. He knew that if he picked up a crystal of aquamarine, and if he cut that aquamarine in Brazil, set it on the piece of jewelry in Brazil, and sell it to tourists, because Brazil has always been a touristic place for the rich and famous. The mythic Copacabana Palace Hotel, everybody knows that, in Copacabana in Rio de Janeiro. And if he had that vertical integration with Brazilian gemstones, he would create value. And from one rock that used to be exported to Germany, to the United States, to anywhere in the world to be cut and set in jewelry, if it was made locally in local jewelry, he could provide better profits for his investment and have jobs for everyone. And he succeeded. I remember being a tourist in Brazil in the 1990s and staying on a nice hotel in Copacabana and receiving pamphlets from two companies, from Sauer and from H. Stern. Both Jewish guys that went to Brazil in a very difficult moment, and they were hardworking, very smart guys, and they did it. And they did this kind of thing. And both, they were really successful. And what I admired in Jules, I knew both personally. Fortunately, I had long talks with both of them. But Jules, he had this commitment to knowledge as well. He built a wonderful museum in Ipanema, wonderful. And he was really passionate about Brazilian gemstones, and he published extensively about that. And a lot of the recognition that Brazilian colored gemstones started to have internationally, I think started with this gentleman. And we have here on the room, Karina. Are you still in the room, Karina Sena? Karina, say yes.
Hi, Karina.
Hi, Ed. Nice seeing you. Rui, as always, bringing the sunshine. Even when it's raining, we always enjoy his presentations. I'm sure you're giving, you two guys, now that your team, bringing lots of fun. My pleasure, my pleasure. It's nice seeing you. It's nice seeing Edward. Yeah, it's been like you. I had the privilege of meeting both of them. My father was into mining as well. He used to go to the mine with, especially with Julius Sauer. And there is something that most people who hasn't, known him that much, He was a character. You know, having dinner with him was like for, especially when I got older, you know, and I would have dinner with him. It would last 3-4 hours. He has lots of histories about Hollywood, about, you know, he was a bon vivant, as we say. But he also had a very nice heart. He gave a lot back to the community, especially in Bahia, the countryside of Bahia. He was very, on his late days, he was very grateful for all the money that he made from some mines that he got, especially back then was an amethyst mine from Bahia and another emerald mine. And as you mentioned, emerald, you know, when we talk about emerald, Brazilian emeralds, we talk before Julius São and after, because our stones were not colored by chromium, as most of emeralds are. And he was the one who went there. Even on my GIA books, I had, oh, I know this guy. And he was really the one who fought for Brazilian emeralds being recognized as emerald despite being colored by vanadium back then, right? But he was a true special person. He had a beautiful heart, also because he has lots and lots of community work, especially with children, and he really didn't want to appear. You know, very few people knew that he was the one giving the money for the institution. And I just can say that I'm very, very grateful to have the pleasure of knowing these guys who inspired us and continue inspiring us in gemology.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And to have like an inside testimony like yours, I mean, you met the gentleman, and I only met them occasionally, formally. For instance, Mr. Stern, I just had a meeting with him, and he was showing me his private collection, and it was about it with Jules and with Daniel, with Daniel. I used to drink beers and Franco Passarinho, which is chicken, fried chicken. It's I miss those moments.
You know, what really surprised me, you know, I remember I was very young when I met Julius. My father was, you know, trading gemstones with him. And I remember him, you know, he uses very thick glasses, right? And he would, you know, take the stones very close. But he was the guy that when I went to GIA and then I learned about heft, I said, oh, the guy who I know who knows more about heft, because only by, you know, playing with the stone on his hands, he could tell if it was a topaz or an aquamarine and all that. I think he balanced the absence, because some people doesn't know this, that he barely could see from one eye, and he compensated with, you know, with other senses, like the sense of heft. That sometimes, you know, only when we use density liquids and stuff, he could do that by his hand. So these things were, you know, amazing, you know, of knowing these guys. So thank you for making a tribute to them.
Yes, I curiously, like when he passed away 3 years ago, I wrote a tribute in Portuguese and one in English, and I published. And he was a great guy, and I loved him very much, indeed. Yes, and I love you also very much, Karina, and thank you so much
here.
for coming here and sharing with us those stories about that Brazilian character, mostly on colored gemstones. He was not much into diamonds, but he wrote a nice book on diamonds, which is also. But he was really knowledgeable. Thank you, Karina. Great to see you, and glad that you are okay. Send my love to your mother.
I will. Take care.
Thanks, Karina.
Bye, Ed.
Bye-bye. Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
Same here.
You know, we were talking this afternoon about how many people you've educated over the past 2 months. What was it, 12 or 14,000 people? 18,000. Say that again?
18,000.
18,000 people have viewed your webinars over the past two or bit
since March the 18th.
Since March 18th. So, you know, we thank you for keeping us sane. Well, relatively sane in this period.
And thank you so much, Edward. Thank you, CIBJO, for the support. And thank you all that have been there, offering your precious time to be here with us for a almost 90 minutes of gemology and fun and quite relaxing conversation, what it is. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.